Hello everybody, my name's Tom, back talking about F1 Fantasy. It's Friday, which means final thoughts. We're going into Austria. Do love these videos because the excitement isn't just building anymore, it's very much here. It's the weekend. We're racing again, and it's not a sprint weekend, interestingly. So used to being a sprint weekend at this track in recent times. We're back to just a normal FP1, FP2, FP3, and we've had the first two FP sessions. And we're going to have a look at what that means for our teams. So we'll have a look at the FP1 and FP2 times. We're going to have a look at the long run data that have been pulled from Twitter, look at my team, look at the budget builder, etc. And eventually, like towards the end of the video, I've been refreshing this before I've recorded, and they still don't have the practice debrief with the sims and stuff on the F1 website. So at the end of the video, I'm going to come back and just like spam the refresh button, see if it comes up, just to get a view on what is going on with the F1 sims. But for the time being, we don't have that available. So I'm just going to plug away and get on with the video, and hopefully that reappears by the time I finish talking. So what are we seeing from F1, FP2? What did we expect going into F1, FP2? Well, we expected obviously the McLarens to be good. We thought maybe the Ferraris would be better. You know, they've bought yet more upgrades. They've been bringing a lot of upgrades this season, and not much is going on there. FP1, obviously Leclerc wasn't in there. They had this Beganovic, if that's how you pronounce his name, a bit off the pace. Hamilton had a issue with his car, which meant he didn't get a great deal of run in. It didn't look great for Ferraris, to be fair, and George Russell continuing his fantastic form from Canada. He did say in an interview after the practice sessions that FP1 surprised him. He didn't expect to be that quick round here, and FP2 was more what they expected. If we pop to FP2, we can see he's down here in P6. So the fact that Russell was saying, he expected this to be more of the likely performance is like doesn't bode particularly well for anyone that's got Mercedes or wants to go Mercedes. Does have me some cause for concern, but when we get onto the race pace, we'll discuss it further in just a second. The Ferraris did definitely improve. Leclerc actually got in the car, said he felt quite comfortable in the car, but they just don't have the raw pace. The car feels fine. Like Lewis Hamilton's not complaining about balance or anything like that. He's been quite honest that it feels okay, but it's just not fast enough, which is not what you want to hear. That said, again, it seems to be more the quali pace that's the struggle for the Ferraris at the moment, as opposed to the race pace. That's great in terms of potential positions gained and overtake. But I was looking at some statistics for this track, and I can't remember the exact percentage, but it's roughly 75%. Roughly 75% of all victories at this track have come from someone who's qualified in the top three. So if the Ferraris aren't going to sort of trouble the top three in qualifying, which doesn't look like they are at the moment from what we've seen, they're not that likely to, actually compete for the win despite them having good race pace. So it does have some concern. Is there fast pit stops enough to keep them in the team? I don't know, but we will discuss that a little bit more in a minute. The surprise here for me is Lance Stroll, and the fact that Alonso's up here as well. When we go back to FP1, Aston Martins are kind of as expected. P13, P14, pretty, only just over half a second off the pace, so not too dramatic. But then they come up here in FP2, and Lance Stroll is P4. He's actually not got a terrible record around it, to be fair. He's actually not got a terrible record. So Aston Martin, suddenly, obviously everyone's going to be piling onto Alonso because he's super cheap and he's going to get price gain unless something horrific happens, which I wouldn't rule out, but you never know. So I think Alonso's going to be popular, and I think Stroll is rightfully not going to be popular because he's looking like it's going to get a price drop. But the Aston Martin constructor, for the people that want to gain budget, might not be awful. Historically quite good straight line speed as well, which is good around this track. So I don't know. Stroll there, when I first saw it, I was like, that's just an anomaly, right? It's just not going to happen. And I guess probably come qualifying, Stroll's not going to be there. But if he can sort of push to get into the points, and Alonso we know is good at qualifying and could also sort of hold position and get some points, might not be the worst thing in the world. But obviously the McLaren's still just dominating here. Mercedes looked, they don't look especially great here, but when we do move on to I'm going to have to move my face because I'm in the way here. Let me just move myself down here. About there, it should do the trick, I think. So you can see this is taken from Twitter, and I've looked at several different accounts that have all posted these long run paces just from FP2 to see who's fastest, and it's a pretty clear consensus that these are accurate times. More or less, like I said, I've looked at several accounts, and this is kind of the consensus from what I've seen. So I don't take my own times. I've taken this from Brake Boosted again, as I did recently. But what we can tell here What we can see, obviously, McLarens have the headline times. They're the quickest on the soft. But these are more the medium, hard run, longer runs. And we see, again, the McLarens are the quickest. But it's only just quickest. So you can see Norris here, the fastest time. Rounded up, that's 9.7, which is pretty much level with Piastri. Interesting that Piastri's on the hard. Does that just mean that the hard, no one else here is on the hard? Does that mean that Piastri is just insanely quick, or does it just mean that the hard is maybe the better race tire? Not really sure exactly what it means, but it's interesting. And then you've got Hamilton and Verstappen on the softs. They didn't do particularly long runs, so it's kind of hard to derive much information from that, but they're still, again, pretty steady. 9.7 from Verstappen, 9.8 from Hamilton, like I say, on the softs compared to medium hard, so maybe not quite as impressive, and like I say, only 4 or 5 laps here already. But the Clerk also showing good race pace, 9.7, or pretty much 9.8, I guess you could round it up. And the fact that Leclerc and Hamilton are both kind of consistent within sort of half a tenth of each other gives me some confidence that the Ferrari's race pace is actually kind of there. What does confuse me a bit is the Russell-Antonelli pace, because we've seen throughout the season so far that Russell has been the quicker driver. So the fact that Antonelli at 9.7, again, really fast from Antonelli, like really quick. It's like, second only to, Verstappen on the soft, and then the 2 McLarens. Like he's actually ahead of Leclerc here on the medium tire, and it's a long run. So this is 14 laps at Antonelli. It does confuse me slightly that Russell is slower, coming in at 10.0. I mean, again, in an interview after the session, Russell did say they made some changes between the sessions and they weren't overly happy. I think it was Russell. It might have been what's his name, Chauvelin. I can't remember exactly who, but someone from Mercedes said they've made changes that weren't great necessarily, and they'll look at it in the simulator overnight and sort of come back in FP3, hopefully corrected. So maybe that had some impact on what was going on with Russell. So again, the race pace actually looks pretty decent, I would say, for the Mercedes. It's going to get hotter as the weekend goes on, and we know Mercedes is very temperamental in the temperatures, the higher temperatures. So again, slight concern there for Mercedes, but they have just looked particularly strong in the last couple of rounds since they've had a couple of upgrades stuck on the car. So yeah, coming in at 4 or 5 million cheaper than Ferraris, it does definitely make me think, are Mercedes worth a transfer in? Okay, so I just had a quick check of the F1 website again. Just going to butt in here with a quick edit, and I've noticed that practice debrief has been put out. So before I go any further recording, I'm going to have a quick look at the debrief. So I haven't actually looked at this yet. We're going to look at this together and see exactly what's made of it. I'm not going to read it all word for word, but we can have a look at qualifying pace. And wow, look how far back the Ferraris are here. We knew they were not looking great in terms of their low fuel pace, but that's a big difference. A big difference. Like, yikes. That means they're probably going to be qualifying, back P6, P7, P8. I mean, I know Leclerc in particular is very good at qualifying. Maybe he can edge forward, but wow, the fact that on a track like this where it's so close, on a where the lap times are like a minute 5 or whatever it is, to be that far away is actually it's quite a big difference, to be honest. No surprise to see McLaren at the top. Mercedes and Red Bull like just neck and neck basically, but the fact that Tsunoda is just kind of not really there. Let's have a quick look at FP1, FP2 again. Tsunoda, 17th. Tsunoda, okay, P7, not terrible in FP2 to be fair. Let's hop back. So yeah, Mercedes, wow, appealing in terms of qualifying pace, but we kind of knew they looked quite decent. Are they going to be affected by these high temperatures? I'm not sure. Past that, qualifying pace, Williams actually look kind of marginally better. Yeah, Aston Martin kind of boosted up there. Interesting. Okay, let's have a little scroll down. Ideal laps, ideal order. Norris, Piastri, Verstappen, Stroll still up there. Leclerc, Russell, Hamilton. Interesting. Okay, and then Red Bull in the fight. Race pace. Okay, race pace. Mercedes are still there. Very interesting, according to these official F1 sims. Mercedes are still there. Qualifying to race pace doesn't change much else. Obviously, Red Bull seemed to drop back a fraction, about a tenth back from Mercedes. Very interesting. This makes Mercedes more appealing purely based on just this report, obviously, but it's hard to know exactly how they're going to perform in the hotter temperatures come Sunday. Very interesting. What else we got in here? Yeah, the Williams just right in the mix. They're just not looking as strong as I thought they would. Aston Martin look like they're just edging ahead of the rest of the crew. So again, Alonso looking good this weekend. Yeah, it's all very tight. Like, even like this whole big batch here is basically like only a couple of tenths in amongst them for the race pace. But yeah, obviously it adds up over a lot of laps. But yeah, interesting. Car performance in the straights. Looks like Red Bull's a bit of a rocket ship in the straight. What else? So we've got slow speed. Aston Martin actually looking pretty good in the slow speed. Interesting. High speed corners not so great. And Mercedes, Mercedes struggling a bit in the high speed. Again, that's why they kind of excelled a little bit in Canada, is that there was no high speed, and you can see that they're really not doing great in high speed again, which does make me think, Silverstone, a lot of high speed going through Silverstone, so are Mercedes going to struggle a bit next week? So do I really want a chance bringing them in this weekend? I don't know. Whereas Ferrari, that said, Ferrari's done it particularly great in terms of the gap to McLaren in the high speed, so that's kind of interesting as well. But okay, interesting. Yeah, quickly just go back to the race pace again. So yeah, it's got Mercedes right there, less than a tenth. Wow, that's really, really interesting considering they're likely to qualify well as well. Go back to this from FP2. So yeah, it looks like this Russell shenanigans at 10.0 is not really representative, and looks like they believe Antonelli is more representative of what's going on. And yeah, I'm liable to kind of believe that at the moment. I've seen a graph. It must be true. Right, let's have a look at the team. Yes, interesting. So again, I could just hold Ferrari, keep fire, trust in the pit stops. Maybe they'll break the 2-second barrier at some point soon. Or we could just dip it down to Mercedes. You could argue Red Bull as well, but I still don't really trust Tsunoda, even though he looks okay in FP2. It does open up a lot of budget as well, which is really nice, and we're close to this dream team. If we just chop some people off, bring in Russell, we're close. It doesn't look like it because I've only got 3.2 in the bank, but we're actually close. Particularly as Hadjar is possibly going to drop off in terms of, next week next week Hadjar loses this 16-pointer and he's going to live off this 1-pointer. So we could see a potential price drop for Hadjar, so he could just be gone. And if we sort it, we sorted it by value. Defaults to season points for some reason. So if we go to like the cheapest guys, like a Bortoletto, could be a good time to bring Bortoletto in now before he goes up in price. Get him at rock bottom price, and then you can use him to enable this Russell build potentially. Colapinto, I'm not convinced by him. I think Fernando Alonso definitely go up in price. He's going to give me that 0.6. Hulkenberg's going to give me 0.6. Hopefully Hadjar can get me at least 0.2, if not 0.6 this week before I potentially transfer him out. So although it looks like I've got like no budget, I've actually probably got like 2.5 billion likely. I know Russell's probably going to go up 0.3, so that closes the gap fractionally. But everyone else should go up like 0.3. And these guys, the B tier guys, should hopefully get me a nice 0.6 chunk. If you go to someone like Gasly, who looks liable, just needs 5 points to get that maximum rise. It's interesting this week to go to someone like Gasly, and then I'm thinking like next week, if I shave off all these guys that have gave me all that budget, if possible, and drop down to the cheapest drivers. I think for me it's probably still a little bit out there, and I probably need to wait until like after Silverstone, perhaps, maybe a couple of races time. But the fact that we're close, and I'm at like an average, amongst engaged managers, as I say, I'm about average 114.8 million. About average, I'd say. There are plenty of other managers out there that are on 116, 117, 118. Wouldn't be surprised if people are even higher than that if they've been really pushing like the B tier constructors or whatever. But my point is that we are close. We are close to getting this build, and it's made me hyper away. Last week or whenever it was, a couple of weeks ago before Canada, I was like, do we want to start thinking about points over budget for these B tiers? But that's been put to bed when I realised how close I am to this build. And obviously Russell is the dream because I think I prefer him over Antonelli, but Antonelli being a lot cheaper does make it a lot more affordable. I mean, I could almost certainly actually afford this Antonelli build going into Silverstone next week. But like I say, Mercedes going to be good around Silverstone? It's kind of tough to say. With those lots of high-speed corners, maybe not. So maybe Ferrari are a hold. But either way, my point is that we're close. If we're not there already, if we haven't got a big budget already, then we're close. So definitely need to be concentrating on these B tier guys to try and boost us up as much as possible. So Lawson's definitely got to go. Colapinto, I think, is the next one that's susceptible. He really did scrape a 0.2 by the skin of his teeth rise, which is great, but I don't see him doing much more. Plus, he's liable to potentially losing his seat. Who knows? So transfer him out now before it becomes a problem is not the worst idea. So an absolute dead cert for me unless something crazy happens in FP3, like maybe Alonso just completely destroys his car and can't qualify, then I probably wouldn't go. Well, actually, even then, I'd probably still put him in because he's still going to go up 0.6. Yeah, like he'll get positions gained and overtakes as well. So I'll just take the -5 from him and just take the 0.6 rise. Like, Alonso's just like basically a lock. The only reason that he wouldn't get my team is if he, like, I don't know, was ill or something and just literally couldn't race or whatever and was going to get like a non-classified thing or whatever. But yeah, Alonso's in the team. He's just a no-brainer for me. Past that, I've already touched on other candidates. I'm thinking, in my team selection video, I did talk a bit about Carlos Sainz. The Williams don't excite me that much. They haven't looked as impressive as I thought they would, but he's still an option. I don't hate this. Go Carlos Sainz and just roll in the third transfer if I don't want to make that Mercedes move. But other than Carlos Sainz, like I say, I'm already kind of looking at Gasly because he's got a low threshold to rise. He's got a good record around here. He's finished in the top 10, sort of 3 out of the last 4 seasons or something like that. He's I say top 10, but he's literally like P10 or whatever. But it's still top 10 to the point, right? But yeah, my point is that Gasly only needs a 0 to go up and a 5-pointer for the max rise. So yeah, that's really tempting. The next option is Bortoleto, because he also only needs 4 points to finally get a bit of a price gain. And investing in him when he's at his absolute bare minimum and you can't lose budget, it's absolute safety net in terms of budget, with the potential to go up. And the fact he's looked good, like if we look at FP1 here, P6, like wow, 3/10 off the pace, and then FP2, P8, 8/10 off. Obviously a bit more of a gap there, but still, Bortoleto looking extremely good. So yeah, could chance it with Bortoleto. I think my main thing is like Alonso's a lock. This second option here, I'm keeping Hulkenberg, keeping Hadjar. It's close between Bortoleto, Gasly, and Sainz for me. I think I'll go with my gut feeling tomorrow, as well as in combination with who's gonna get me the most budget. Like I say, Gasly does look tempting because he's got the fewest points to get. And he has a good record around here, but the Alpine also doesn't excite me around here. And then the only other real big decision is what to do Ferrari versus Mercedes. Obviously, we need to see a bit more in FP3, but we obviously all got sidetracked a little bit, not all of us, but many of us, myself included, got sidetracked in Canada with FP3, thinking, oh yeah, Ferrari are fine, Mercedes, I'll just ignore what happened on Friday. Let's not make that same mistake again. Whatever you do, bear in mind that Mercedes have looked good, and the F1 sims have them good again. Like they said on the F1 sims last week or 2 weeks ago for Canada, Mercedes were right up here, and these sims aren't always right. We'll say they're not always right, but they were pretty accurate last week out with the Mercedes race pace and quali pace. Antonelli looking okay, not inspiring, but okay, and obviously on the back of a podium in Canada. George Russell's just driving phenomenally well. Does excite me somewhat, like tempting me in to go with Mercedes. I will admit the team looks a bit ugly like this. It's a bit too much green for my liking. I do kind of like the red splash, but I'm not going to pick my team based on that. So yeah, I think I need to have a little bit more of a think about it overnight. Obviously see what happens in FP3, have a little bit more into driver interviews and stuff and see what people are saying, and then make my decision. So yeah, for me, Alonso's a lock. That second budget option is just whoever's going to get the most budget and looks okay. If I had to pick right this second, initially, going into this weekend, I'd say Sainz. He's fallen back a little bit in my liking. He's quite expensive and therefore doesn't really open up the opportunity. He's at 8 million or whatever it is, 8.3 million. So it makes it a bit more difficult if I move to him now to get to the dream team of a Russell Mercedes build with Piastri McLaren. So going cheap now is maybe sensible. So that's why I'm maybe leaning towards a Gasly because he's got a low threshold to get that rise, or maybe a Bortoleto because he looks decent and might squeak a rise. But yeah, if I had to pick right this second, I'd say probably Gasly just because of budget reasons, and this would be my team. But yeah, I'm still very undecided on this Mercedes Ferrari stuff. And like I said, the pit stops for Ferrari are really good. They're going to get that sub 2 stop. Eventually, it could happen the weekend I remove them from my team most likely, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. But yeah, this is where I'm going. Something on these lines. It's looking like this. Like I say, if I want to use that third transfer, it means I only have 2 going to Silverstone, but it's not the end of the world. Or I could save that transfer to keep Ferrari, but I'm going to prioritize getting the budget out of my B tiers, and then obviously I want to get the most points possible. But I am also conscious of keeping that third transfer open going into Silverstone, so I might only make 2 transfers. The last thing I'm going to say is Norris owners, what to do. He does look pretty decent again. Like I say, if we look at the fast run, the long run pace, here, he is the fastest, albeit only fractionally, mediums compared to the hards or whatever. But he's going to drop price by the looks of it. If we just hop it again, back to the budget builder, have a look at Norris. So to get any sort of a rise, he needs 58 points. It's almost impossible on a non-sprint weekend. I don't know how he'd do. He'd have to get a ton of overtakes, driver of the day, fastest lap. He'd have to just do the whole shebang just to avoid a price drop, basically. I think it's unlikely. So he's going to gain in price. So that already is like a bit of a dark cloud above Norris owner's head. I'd say Piastri looks like an easy move back in. Russell, if you're tempted to go that way, but I think Piastri, McLaren is still the quickest car. So why? You could go different, and just for the sake of being different. Russell's ownership is probably a bit lower. Where are we? Yeah, Russell's ownership, and this is the Patreon Top 500, 1.4 compared to 87%. Yeah, so Russell's obviously a massive differential, but I still think Piastri is just the best option for the time being, and we should be looking to build that budget to get to a Piastri plus Russell build rather than just trying to be clever by going Russell. It could work if you want to go down that road, but for me personally, I think Piastri is the best option for Norris owners. You could argue hold him. He's due a driver of the day. He hasn't had one for a while, and when he does come back, he's had some iffy moments. Obviously, we had the Canada crash and everything. Eventually, I think the first race he comes back and actually wins, which could be any race because he's in the McLaren. The first race that happens, he's probably going to get driver of the day, so I wouldn't hate holding on to him because he could get driver of the day. He's good for fastest lap. He could have a big 50 pointer or something. But yeah, my general feeling for long term is probably Piastri is just an easy 2 times. So that's where my head's at. Thanks very much for listening for me. That's it for me this week. I can't do a deadline stream. Unfortunately, I promise I will do a deadline stream at some point soon. I've just been rubbish at doing that. I've done 2 this season, which is appalling, but I will do a deadline stream at some point. I just can't do it over the next couple of weeks, I'm afraid, because of other commitments. But I will hopefully get back to it at some point soon. So I'll see you soon for some Silverstone thoughts, and I'll probably be moderately active over on Twitter if you don't follow me over there already at PopManF1, and I'll probably be posting my team if I am out and about ahead of the deadline tomorrow. So as long as I've got decent signal and everything, I will post my team on YouTube, community tab, and Twitter. So these are my thoughts. Thanks very much, and I'll catch you soon. Thanks for listening. Bye.